السلام عليكم جميعا. أحب أرحب بحضراتكم في أول ميت اب لينا موجودة ككوميونيتي معمول علشان إزاي إن إحنا نشتغل مع حضراتكم towards إزاي إن إحنا نpush more education, more knowledge, more mentoring, more support, more projects موجودة في مجال الديتا ساينس. طبعا سعيد إن النهارده معانا واحده من الجاينتس الكبيره في المجال ده، احد الشركات الكبيره اللي هي شركه انفيديا. وان شاء الله بس مستني بس اماليا تخش بس معانا بحيث اني نبتدي الايفنت، فهندي بس كده a few more minutes وهنبتدي على طول ان شاء الله. الأستاذ أيمن محمد عبد الله بيقول الصوت واطي، هل بقية الناس سامعين صوتي كويس ولا لأ؟ استاذ ايمن، واضح ان الصوت كويس عند اغلب الناس، فيا ريت حضرتك بس تبقى تعلي الصوت من الفوليوم من عندك يعني.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? I see a yes. Okay, awesome.
Yes, Amelia, we can hear you. So if
Awesome.
you're ready, I can probably get started.
Thank
So,
you so much.
okay, excellent. Let me get started here. Great. So, I want to go ahead and you start this meetup today. And I want to, of course, welcome Amelia with us, who I'm going to introduce in a short while. But before I do that, Amelia, if you let me, I'm just going to speak in Arabic for a few minutes just to describe to them what we're starting over here. And then I'll switch back to you in a couple of minutes, if that's okay.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Dr.
Okay,
Magid.
excellent. طيب، أول حاجة بحب أرحب بيكم وبالنيابة عن وزير التعليم العالي والبحث العلمي. أحب إن أنا أرحب بيكم في الانيشيتيف اللي إحنا بادئينه هنا هوت. والانيشيتيف دوت جاي بيست على رؤية موجودة من الدولة، هو إزاي إن إحنا نقدر نساعد كل واحد من حضراتكم، سواء كنتوا طلبة موجودة في الجامعات، سواء كنتوا باحثين أو أساتذة شغالين في المجال البحث العلمي جوه الجامعات أو المراكز البحثية، أو كنتوا خريجين موجودين شغالين في الصناعة أو الشركات الجميلة الموجودة عندنا. زي ما حضراتكم عارفين، مجال الديتا ساينسز بقى مجال كبير جدا، مجال له مستقبل كبير. الاحتياج بتاعه فوركاستد ان هو هتبقى حاجة عظيمة جدا ومطلوبة جدا في خلال السنين اللي فاتت. يمكن لسه الدنيا بتبتدي، ولكن بقى في بوش كبيره موجوده جوه الجامعات علشان الناس تبدا تخش جوه مجال الارتفيشال انتليجنس، الجزء بتاع الداتا فيجواليزيشن، اي حاجه ليها دعوه بداتا اناليتكس، داتا ساينس، ارتفيشال انتليجنس، ديب ليرنينج، كل الحاجات المختلفه اللي ليها دعوه بعلوم البيانات او الداتا ساينسز، هي ده اللي احنا هنعمله. البرنامج ده برنامج متكامل موجود. ازاي ان هيبقى فيه كورسات مختلفه. النهارده ما هوش كورس، النهارده بس تعريف بايه اللي احنا بنبتديه مع بعض. هيبقى في كورسات مختلفه، هيبقى في ورش عمل تطبيقيه موجوده، سواء كانت هتبقى موجوده اونلاين او هتبقى موجوده على ارض الواقع، نتقابل مع بعض فيس تو فيس. هيبقى في مشاريع هيتم طرحها عن طريق مجموعه من الشركاء من الصناعه عشان حضراتكم تشتغلوا فيها. وهوفلي ده كمان يبدأ يؤهل إلى إن في فرص عمل وفرص تدريب موجودة مع الشركات اللي إحنا هنبقى شغالين معاها جوه الاندستري بتاعتنا جوه مصر، ويمكن كمان بره مصر، بس مش هو ده اللي إحنا بنبص عليه. وبالتالي في خلال الفترة دي عشان نعمل الكلام ده ما ينفعش نعمله كوزارة لوحدنا، ما ينفعش ان احنا نشتغل مع ال 98 جامعة بس او ال 11 مركز بحثي اللي موجود عندنا في مصر بس. لازم يبقى ايدينا في ايدين الشركات اللي شغالة في دي. وطبعا في شركات ليها باع كبير، ويمكن هي اللي شغالة في المجال دوت. وعشان كده اول الشركات اللي احنا شغالين فيها معاها هي شركة انفيديا. وان شاء الله وكمان لسه مقفلين برضو الشراكه مع اي دبليو اس. وهوفري في شركات تانية زي مايكروسوفت هتبقى موجوده. اعتذر. وهيبقى في اسمها يونيتي. وبالتالي في عندنا مجموعه مختلفه من الشركات لسه بنقفل الديل دوت، عشان مش بس ان احنا ننقل لكم نولج، مش بس ان احنا ننقل لكم خبره عن طريق مجموعه من المنتورز المتميزين اللي شغالين في الصناعه، مش بس ان احنا هنتيح ليكم اكسس لسيرفرز موجوده، كلاود اسيتس موجوده عشان تقدروا تشتغلوا وتطبقوا الحاجات اللي انتم بتتعلموها. لا، احنا عايزين ازاي ننتجريت الكلام ده كله. طبعا هتاخدها واحده واحده، لكن الطريقه دي هتحصل ازاي؟ ان احنا هنبدا نكون في كل محافظه، هنعمل نادي للديتا ساينس، هيبقى اسمه الديتا ساينس كلوب. وجوه الديتا ساينس كلوب دوت هيبقى فيه عندنا مجموعه من الريسورسز، الحاجات اللي انا قلت لكم عليها دي، سواء كان كورسات او مشاريع او تدريبات او منتورشيب سيشنز موجوده هتتعمل، سواء هتتقدم اونلاين او هتتقدم فيزيكلي جوه الديتا ساينس كلوب اللي هيبقى موجود في المحافظه بتاعتكم. غالبا هيبقى هاوست جوه واحده من الجامعات اللي موجوده في المحافظات المختلفه. وطبعا هنكون بنطلب من الناس ان هم لو عايزين يشتركوا في حاجات فيزيكال اون ذا جراوند هيروحوا يحضروا الحاجات الفيزيكال، وطبعا هتبقى في حاجات برضو اونلاين. فبالتالي هنبدا نقسم حضراتكم على الديتا ساينس كلوبز ديت في الفتره اللي جايه. وواحده واحده، الدنيا اكيد مش هتبقى منظمه في الاول، اكيد الدنيا مش هتبقى بيرفكت موجوده في الاول، لكن احنا سعداء موجودين شركه كبيره زي انفيديا، اللي طبعا فخور ان انا كنت اشتغلت فيها يمكن تقريبا لمده 12 سنه. و و ودلوقتي هقدم ليكم طبعا السبيكر الموجوده معانا النهارده، علشان نقدر ان احنا نكمل السيشن ديت. الاول قبل ما اخش، لو في حد عايز يسال اي سؤال يكتبه بسرعه في الشات عشان نبتدي على طول. اغلب الكورسات اللي موجوده هتبقى كورسات مجانيه. يمكن يكون في بعض الحاجات اللي هي هتبقى بفلوس، بس سو فار كل الحاجات اللي موجوده عندنا تحت ايدينا هتبقى يعني ممكن نقول عليها فور فري. في حاجات هتبقى موجهه لطلبه مدارس، في حاجات هتبقى موجهه لطلبه جامعات، في حاجات هتبقى موجهه للخريجين، وفي حاجات هتبقى موجهه للشركات خصوصا شركات الناشئه. في بعض البروجرامز اللي موجوده اللي انفيديا بتقدمها سبيسيفيكلي بصه ل سبيسيفيكلي بصه للشركات الناشئه وازاي ان هي تقدر تسبورت الستارت ابس في المجال ده. ما اعرفش اذا كان في اي اسئله تانية قبل ما ابتدي وابدا ان انا انتروديوس الجاست بتاعتنا النهارده. لو في حد عنده اي اسئله بس يقول لي. طبعا في حاجات موجوده لاعضاء هيئه التدريس والهيئه المعاونه، سواء عشان تساعدهم في الابحاث بتاعتهم او علشان ان هي تساعدهم في ادخال اللي هم بياخدوه ده جوه الكورسات اللي موجوده. طبعا في حاجات مختلفة، حاجات ليها دعوة بالديتا ساينسز في جميع مجالاتها. في حاجات ليها طبعا بالجي بي يو كودينج، ديب ليرنينج، ولسه كمان جنراتيف اي اي. فالنهارده هتسمعوا اكتر يمكن منها، وكل حاجة هنقدر نقدمها عشان تبقى باين ليكوا. هنبقى حاطين معايير قبول معينة علشان حضراتكم تبقوا شايفين احنا هنعمل ايه. فلو في اي any more questions عشان we need to start. لو حد عايز يسأل one last question or two more questions. في حاجات طبعا هتبقى محتاجة prior knowledge موجود. طبعا دي أكيد يعني. وفي حاجات هتبقى اسمها ده مش هتبقى محتاجة وهتبقى absolutely يعني من الأول خالص يعني. الناس اللي من خارج مصر ممكن طبعا تقدم أونلاين. التوقيتات بتاعت الحاجات هتبقى بصراحة all over. هنحاول ان اغلب الحاجات تبقى يعني after hours، بس مش هنقدر طبعا نوعد ان ده دايما ايه هيحصل. اللي اسمها تكوين الكلابز جوه الجامعات دي لسه هنشتغل فيها مع الجامعات المختلفة. لو في حد عنده اقتراحات ممكن طبعا يريتش اوت بالنسبة لي. لو في اي حد عنده اي سؤال تاني نقدر يقوله لي. ازاي جامعات تقدر تعمل مع حضراتكم. احنا اوريدي عندنا فوكال بوينتس موجوده جوه كل جامعه مع رئيس الجامعه، فاحنا اوريدي هنبتدي. بس لو في حد عايز يتواصل معانا نكبر الدايره طبعا تحت امركم. I will stop here right now because we need to start. So again, I would like to introduce to you today Amelia Vashwanas, who has been already with us before a few months ago, and we're really glad to have her. Maybe the last time we had her physically in Egypt, and today she'll be joining us online. She's the head of the AI developer engagement strategy at NVIDIA, and she focuses mainly on how to engage and enable developers so that they can build and innovate with NVIDIA AI technologies. She joined NVIDIA, I think, about 5 years ago as the product marketing lead for deep learning. And she has more than 10 years of industry experience in multiple companies like Intel and Molex. And she's currently pursuing her MBA at Berkeley Haas, and she has a master's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Minnesota and a bachelor's degree in electronic engineering from India. I'd like to welcome you today with us, Amelia. It's a true pleasure to have you, and I'd like to thank, of course, Neda and all the team with you that have been working with me in the past couple of months, and we're really, really happy to start this very strong partnership with Egypt as a country, working with the different sectors that we have, whether we're talking about the different 98 universities that we have across Egypt, the 11 different research institutes that we have, even working with some of those very, I would say, hardworking K to 12 students that have also shown some interest, but maybe with more support towards the actual graduates who are pushing out and working in different great companies in Egypt in the different industry sectors, as well as those who are starting their startups. And hopefully, we will be supporting them with with NVIDIA's startup support program, and maybe also some support to the professors and active researchers who definitely are working on some of the cutting edge technologies and would be using many of these new trends and new technologies that are brought to us, hopefully by great giants like NVIDIA. So again, welcome again, and I look forward to having you with us so that you can shed a light on what we're trying to do together, what you have been already doing, and what are those great technologies and trends that we have in the industry, such as generative AI, and what is NVIDIA doing with all the different world players to enable them to push new innovations out to the market.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Magid. Nice to meet you all. Can you hear me? Can you see my slide? Yes, thumbs up. I don't think I can see the chat window, so a few reactions would be helpful. Yes, or maybe I can't really see. Let's see.
Yeah, I think
I just want to make sure.
can see, we can see the screen as well. Amelia, you can go ahead and push it out. You can get started, I think.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right. Let me go into presentation mode. Thank you so much for this opportunity. We really appreciate it. And as Dr. Magid mentioned earlier, I was in Egypt, specifically Cairo, earlier in the year. It was wonderful meeting with a lot of students and university faculty and some of the cool startups on the ground. So it was an exciting time. So now we're back with a virtual session on generative AI. Again, one of the disclaimers that I want to put out there is that there's so much happening, and you and I know that there's so much of disruption happening in this domain right now that as we speak, there are new things that a lot of developers and researchers are putting it out in the world at this point. So my goal with this presentation is for everybody to get curious and maybe get to the next step of learning in general. But again, there's so much more that's happening in this field that it's so fast paced. So I'd highly recommend that you join NVIDIA's developer program to stay updated on what's happening in generative AI and what are some cool open source tools and just in general latest learning materials for you to continue your pathway to learn about generative AI. So with that, I'm happy to be here. It's so nice to reconnect with the local ecosystem. And the way we'll go through the whole presentation is I'll go through some of the slides. I might have some questions in the middle of the presentation. Feel free to post your comments or observations in the chat window. And towards the end, I'll take questions. So we have about an hour and 10 minutes to go through the presentation and do the Q&A. So with that, I'll get started. So before we dive into the details of what generative AI is and what are some application areas and so on, so I highly, highly recommend enrolling in this free self-paced online course that we have that kind of, gives you an end-to-end overview of generative AI. But at the same time, I know a lot of the students are in general curious about featuring a certificate on LinkedIn or, like other avenues where you want to show off that, hey, I learned a thing or two about generative AI and I'm spending more time to understand how this field is evolving and so on. So this is the starting point. So please scan the QR code that you see here. I'll leave it on for a couple of minutes before we proceed. It's a 2-hour self-paced online course. You can take it at any time, on the road, like while you're in school, while you're taking a break, studying from everything else that's going on in school. You can get this done really quickly. Again, it's a free course, so scan the QR code. You can also reach out to me at the end of the presentation if you have further questions, and let's get started. So how many of you have heard of NVIDIA before? Yes? No? I'd like you all to be engaged and posted in the chat window. Magid, are you able to kind of read it out for me, please? Since I'm on presentation mode, I may not be able to see everything that's posted, but would love to. Yeah.
Well, most of the you're talking about the comments on the chat window?
Yes.
Yeah, so far they're just confirming that they can see your screen, but there are no answers so far. Of course, they're saying, of course, one of the biggest companies in GPUs industry. That's what Marwan Hatem was speaking out. And someone, of course, was saying that he already knows about NVIDIA. Some of them are also saying that they've already used some of NVIDIA products, like the Jetson Nano in his graduation project. Another used CUDA, an NVIDIA and self-driving card. Someone has a RTX 3060 Ti GPU, and he is using it in some of his personal needs. And of course, others are are confirming over here that NVIDIA is a well-known deep learning leader in the market, and stuff like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That is so fantastic, right? I'm so glad that you all are aware of NVIDIA, but even more excited because a lot of you have already implemented a university project or a personal project. And I hear some of the startups are also leveraging NVIDIA stack. Again, like just a quick overview for those who have not heard of NVIDIA. So NVIDIA was founded in 1993. We've been a pioneer in accelerated computing. So the company's invention of GPU, graphics processing unit, in 1999 sparked the growth of PC gaming market. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with NVIDIA being a huge player on the gaming side of things. Essentially, we were responsible for transforming or redefining the computer graphics era. And since then, we've also built out the same or similar set of compute that supports modern AI and even metaverse. But again, our focus for the rest of this presentation is not going to be on metaverse. We're going to focus more on NVIDIA's support to developers and how you can get started with generative AI. If you're curious how big NVIDIA is, we are about 27,000 employees in many countries across the world. We have some amazing developers from Egypt who are in some really cool roles at NVIDIA. So if you ever want to, talk to one of the Egyptians at NVIDIA, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect you to them. Awesome. So NVIDIA came up with something called as CUDA about 15 years ago. And this is very popular for accelerated systems and applications area in general. Again, think of it as we were very well known or started out with the gaming market, but since then we have gone on to newer domains. And this is just like at a high level, the different markets we have been able to serve customers and developers. So think of it as medical imaging to life sciences to quantum physics, cybersecurity. I'm sure a lot of you are hearing about quantum computing as well, recommender systems, if you're watching a specific, let's say a YouTube a video, and then it recommends, hey, if you watched a statistics video, here is another one that you may like, and so on. That's all built on a recommender engine. And most of the times, like a lot of these recommender engines require a powerful compute to make those, personalized suggestions for your need, whether it's using YouTube or streaming platform like Spotify, or maybe, like any other sort of application. We'll talk more about ChatGPT and everything else in the upcoming slides. But again, at a high level, think of NVIDIA supporting developers across different domains, and we have over 150 SDKs and libraries, and truly we're built developer first, and this is just at a high level in terms of how we support the different industries. So now zooming into how did the whole AI thing started, right? Like you see that there are so many vendors or partners in general who are looking at how to make the most out of AI, how to support developers and researchers and so on. But again, in no form is this the most latest information, because I think this was the closest graphic that I could get to show how things have evolved. But that said, there's so much happening right now. Again, I just want to add a disclaimer that like there might be a few things that aren't really mentioned in here. You're starting to see that models like like Gemini being like wrapped under Bard, for example, OpenAI releasing many more developer tools and APIs, and so on. But again, it started out, back in the 2000s, and we have seen tremendous increase in awareness and adoption of AI in general. So if you think about it, long ago, everyone was involved in solving classification problem. Essentially, think of it as like making a decision between, is this a cat versus a dog, right? And we all know that. I think right now it's generative AI that's having its moment, and specifically, we're seeing a lot of activity in image synthesis and language modeling. So anyone working already in generative AI, show of hands, what applications do you think generative AI can shine in? Yes, no, some cool applications that you got to try, apps that you have tried. Post it in the chat window. That would be awesome. Okay. Margaret, would you mind reading it out? That would be great.
Yes,
I want to make
people
sure it's a two-way.
started talking right now, and I think they're saying ChatGPT, computer vision applications such as Midjourney, Bard, and ChatGPT. What else I'm trying? Someone's trying to create an LLM for Arabic language. Midjourney, scientific discovery.
Amazing. Those are some really cool applications. Thank you so much, Margaret. Yes. Pretty much everyone's right. That's awesome. I agree with like all of the different applications that most of you have mentioned. And again, this is just the beginning of it, right? So think of generative AI as a type of artificial intelligence technology that can produce various types of content, including text, imagery, audio, and even synthetic data. So as a Gen AI system, you're required to learn about data distributions with DNNs, right? Deep neural network structure, and give one of the most possible solutions to the question answered. I'm sure most of you already relate to that through ChatGPT. Like I think, does anyone know how many downloads ChatGPT, or rather, how many users ChatGPT saw in the first 5 days since it launched last year? Does anyone want to take a guess? Do not ask ChatGPT this question.
Okay, people are guessing. Someone said 1 million. Others said over 100 million. 180 millions. Someone says billions.
Wow. Okay.
Said
I would love
over
for
100 million, 20 million. So there are multiple answers over here. So I'll let you go ahead and reveal the right answer.
So, well, now that's where the curiosity begins. So we're gonna cover how much of adoption did ChatGPT see in the coming slides. But again, I want it to be a two-way discussion, so that'd be awesome if you keep the chat or the discussion forum going. That'd be great. Awesome. So now let's think about OpenAI's GPT models, right? And there are a flavor of transformers that is trained on the internet. So think of it as like in 2018, GPT-3, their third generation LLM, which is one of the most powerful models, was made available. And if you think about it, there's something called as fine tuning that happens depending on the task that you want to input. It might be summarizing a video, or it might be just like, hey, can you rewrite this sentence or paragraph, make it or pack it under, let's say, 20 words and so on. You could do so many things with a simple interface such as ChatGPT. But that said, think about it, right? If something this powerful can be built, have you ever wondered what could be in the back end in terms of building something powerful as GPT or Bard, for example? What are some of the key elements that are important to build, let's say, a large language model and accessing a large language model? And we're going to talk about all these things, but I want you all to start thinking about Gen AI, large language model, and what happens in the back end of an application like ChatGPT. Okay, now let's get to the actual definition of generative AI. If you haven't, if you aren't familiar yet. So generative AI essentially is capable of solving your specific problem and generating, let's say, a new and realistic content based on what it has learned from existing content. So think of it as a text, image, or an audio. So what's really important is, where do you get the data from and how do you access it? So useful data essentially consists of some sort of a structure in generative AI. For example, pictures of faces are recognizable because of their structure. So generative AI aims to find the structure in data and then use that structure to create new content that makes sense. Right? Language data especially is interesting, and you see a lot of researchers and companies putting in more investments and effort in language modeling. There are two key areas where we're seeing a lot of investment. So one is image synthesis, and the other one is language modeling. And I'll show two key examples and a bunch of demos later in the presentation. Now, you might be wondering, where in the world does generative AI sit within the artificial intelligence bubble? So when most companies talk about artificial intelligence, they're talking about using machines to mimic human abilities, to learn, analyze, and predict. But then think of machine learning kind of inside or encapsulated within artificial intelligence, where you use large data sets and sophisticated statistical methods to train a model. Now, within that envelope, you can think of deep learning, right? I'm sure you're familiar with this, but kind of think of generative AI as core of artificial intelligence, where you use these ML algorithms to learn patterns and trends from training data and applying them with an awareness of context to predictively create new content. Again, we spoke about text, imagery, even, let's say, for example, mixing two different images to create a new image and so on. These are just some of the examples, and it's insane how these applications are evolving and how cool apps are being built out by developers like you. All right, now here comes the answer. So ChatGPT saw about 1 million users in 5 days. I think one of you guessed it right. Was that right, Margaret? There was one answer that said 1 million.
Yeah, I think there were 3 people that said 1 million. There was someone that said 1.8, but there were 3 people that got it right.
Perfect. Thank you. So that shows that the ChatGPT became even more popular than an app like Instagram and Spotify. Isn't that insane? I think having something that is more consumer friendly, yet that is deep tech, something like generative AI became so important and disruptive last year, right? So think of generative AI as something that's going to continue to be more and more omnipresent in the different applications that you're seeing, building, or like you might be leveraging something on your phone, might be like auto summarization that happens in a specific app. You might have, let's say, a PDF that's 12 pages that could be compressed into one page. There's so much that these interfaces and applications can help you do. On the left side, you see a combination of models from different companies, starting from 2018 especially. We've seen companies including NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, and so on launch many language models. So there's Megatron, there's BERT from Google, there's GPT-3, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. I understand that most of you are familiar with OpenAI and ChatGPT specifically. But again, this is just the beginning. There's so much more research that worldwide researchers are looking at, that new models are getting published pretty much every other day today. Now, what are some cool applications? I heard scientific computing as one of the applications from the chat window, but can you all think about something unique beyond being applied to education? I'm sure some of you have already considered ChatGPT for education. You have probably heard a lot about like using ChatGPT or a similar application for healthcare applications. Even, let's say, protein, like mimicking, or it could be in, let's say, a bit futuristic, but even in robotics, geosciences, sensing and forecasting, for example, and so on. What are some other cool applications that you all can think about? Can you drop that in the chat window, please?
Okay, some are saying finance. There's a lot of open source models for different applications.
Mm-hmm.
Application to summarize information papers and books. Application to help conduct research. PDF.ai.
Nice.
Implementing AI with Google Docs, and so on.
Amazing. So as you can all see, that generative AI is more and more getting into different applications. So whether you think about finance, one of you mentioned, or it could be writing, content marketing, education, agriculture, and so on, it is becoming more pervasive by the day. So it would be helpful for everyone to understand how generative AI works. And, like when you leverage one of the applications to maybe like, summarize a PDF or convert it into, let's say, convert text into speech and so on, you not only consume what that specific app had to give, but you also understand the underlying technology and what work got put into it to give you an exceptional user interface or an exceptional blog that was written by, let's say, ChatGPT, but assisted essentially one of you who are a marketing manager for for a startup, for example. Again, it's been a disruptive area in general, and I think it's important for everybody to pay careful attention. So if you remember, I shared a QR code for a generative AI course, so I highly, highly recommend that you take that free generative AI course. And we also organize many student workshops, even for faculty as well. These are free workshops. I'll be sure to pass on these links to Dr. Maged, and he can share it in the WhatsApp groups and so on.
Yeah, at the beginning, I also shared with them, Amalia, that we are going to be creating these data science clubs across different universities as hubs inside the different governorates in Egypt, so that we can share these great resources provided like companies like NVIDIA, and also maybe have some physical meetups on the ground with the ambassadors that will be available and many other volunteers coming in from the industry to fortify this and provide more industry relevance and also market forecasts.
Perfect. That sounds exciting, and it is incredible to see so much of interest and also execution with the local ecosystem. So excited to see that coming together.
Exactly. And I also would like to thank all the audience. I think we've had in 5 days, we've had almost 1,800 profiles showing us interest coming in from the different age groups. And for this introductory meetup, I think we've had about 360 signups, and about 160 are with us right now joining online. So I'd like to thank everybody for their time, and again, thanking, of course, Amalia and NVIDIA for for starting with us in this first session.
Thank you so much, Margaret. All right, so far we talked about generative AI, how the evolution has happened, and then we briefly touched upon the different applications. Some of the most viral applications is ChatGPT. So I think that's kind of how we are going through this presentation so far. Now, I want you to think about, like, how does generative AI really work, right? So if you think about it, at a high level, there's something called as a foundational model. And by now, most of you are familiar that, for any model to operate, you need some sort of input and some sort of output. So think of inputs in the form of data format that could be text, image, speech, 3D objects, and so on, that gets inputted into a foundation model. And basically, foundation model is an AI neural network, right? Which is trained on mountains of raw data, generally, like with unsupervised learning. So so you have certain data formats, you can pick and choose. It could be a combination of it, and that's kind of when you hear multimodal large language model, for example, is just one such example, right? And what happens is the output would be various tasks. You might be asking for it to summarize a PDF, like I said, or it could be audio generation. You input text, but then you get an audio generated in, let's say, a chipmunk voice, or catering it to, let's say, a specific language, right? Or it could be mixing two images and creating a cool third image. For example, I have a really cool demo I'll show later in the presentation. Or it could be as simple as question and answering, where let's say, for example, you're trying to solve a statistical problem, and you can place that problem in an interface like ChatGPT, and it can help you, assist you specifically in terms of understanding certain concepts and getting to the answer. But again, it's important to ask the right questions, and some of the times models aren't really fully perfect because there's a lot of research and engineering work still ongoing to make generative AI more and more effective. And we'll talk a little bit about generative AI and everything around ethics and some of the risks involved later in the presentation. Okay, so as I mentioned, the foundation model is essentially an AI neural network. So a model is that where you train it with a lot of data that can be adapted to a wide range of downstream tasks, whether it's question and answering, image captioning, and so on. So this is one of the most fundamental concept that will be very, very important. So I would highly, highly recommend, spending more time if you're remotely curious about generative AI, spend a bit more time understanding foundation models. There are many companies, like I said, that are building many foundation models that are open source. You can look them up. NVIDIA is also one of them. I'm happy to provide specific blogs to learn more about foundation models and, how you can leverage those foundation models to build specific application if you're getting to building a specific application. But I understand that most of you are university students here, so happy to share relevant links. So remember, one of the most important concepts in generative AI is foundation models. How many of you have heard of large language models, LLMs? Yes, I would assume it's a yes. No, yes, no. Okay.
Yes, several people are saying yes, sure, and so on.
Awesome. So large language models, or LLMs, as you see, and I'm sure you're already seeing a lot on YouTube and other learning mediums, whether it's Coursera or NVIDIA's Deep Learning Institute. We talk a lot about large language models. And guess what? Large language models are actually a category of foundation models. Again, think of FMs as models where you train them on massive data sets using a specific type of neural network, something called as a transformer, to learn patterns and relationships present in the textual data. So these are all pre-trained on massive amounts of text data and can be fine-tuned to specific tasks. And we discussed briefly about the tasks, which could be question answering or sentiment analysis and so on. So for those who are not familiar, one of the most common ways to train a model is to just predict the next words in a sequence, right? Using a large language model, right? So we're talking about language. So one of the most basic ways to do anything is to predict the next set of words in a sequence. So it could be predicting the next few words in a text message, or it could be predicting the next few words in, let's say, your favorite song, and so on, in a specific language even, right? So you may have already experienced this in most of the phones where you see the next word prediction, right? When you're typing the text message. So the suggestions show up and sometimes it may not be helpful, right? You might be trying to type in a specific name or, like a localized word, but then it autocorrects it if you're using English and so on. Of course, there's a little bit more smartness that these, models need to get better at. But that said, these are some like very basic day-to-day applications or interfaces where we see AI being put into use. All right, is everyone following so far? We covered generative AI basics, applications. Now we are zooming into foundation models and large language models specifically, which is kind of like a type of foundation model.
Many people saying sure, yes, and a lot of thumbs up.
Awesome. So again, at a high level, it's super important to know about foundation models if you want to make a career out of AI. And if you're interviewing with a company, if you're about to graduate and you want to sound smart, be smart, it is super important to know about AI, but also pay careful attention to what's happening in generative AI foundation models specifically, and how large language models work. Okay, now if you're still not convinced what's going on with the generative AI domain yet, and if you haven't seen the latest news, let me tell you that there's been a lot of investments from key companies in some amazing startups that are building out generative AI related solutions, right? These are some key investors. I just wanted to highlight this because most of you or some of you out there who are dialed in today have an incredible idea that you might want to work on, and that might be generative AI related. So I just wanted to show you that there's a lot of not just hype but also dollars being poured into this domain, and a lot of startups that are doing some incredible innovative work are getting funded. And just think about it, the total addressable market, the TAM is the total addressable market for generative AI just on the software side is said to be about 150 billion, according to Goldman Sachs. So it's a huge, 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 huge market. Just in comparison with the global software industry, which comes up to about 685 billion. So lots of opportunities. Like work on your amazing ideas. We also have a startup program at NVIDIA called NVIDIA Inception. So once you become a registered entity working on a deep tech idea, we would love for you to join our virtual accelerator program that's open for any deep tech startup. And Dr. Margaret can share more information about it. So the key takeaway here is that lots of investments are happening in the generative AI space. These are some key investors, some notable startups you probably already recognize: Cohere, we have Anthropic, we have OpenAI, we have Jasper, Wombo, some really cool applications that they're all building. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the movement that we're seeing is in image synthesis and language modeling. And you'll see specifically that the funding is pouring into these different buckets. So think of it as platform play of startups, audio visual related apps or services that startups are building, and so on. If you want to learn more about this, I think one of the cool websites that I find really helpful is Base10. Let me see if I have that reference in here. No, but yeah, so all of this information is available at Base10. So B10, check out Base10 website. There's some really cool analytics that they've shared about, how this industry is evolving, and some really cool startups that are getting funded. These are just a summary of the different startups that have gained popularity very recently, I would say in the last 7 to 10 months. So pay careful attention to the type of use cases. Again, for someone who is very keen on going deeper with generative AI, or at least want to leverage generative AI at work, I would highly recommend scanning through some of these key startups and what problems are they solving, and how can you leverage that in your current workflow, or in fact, how can you integrate generative AI responsibly into your existing application, and so on. Again, some really cool startups. Pay careful attention to some of these cool segments. It could be in customer support, for example, or simple text summarization. I know someone posted something about PDF AI. Some really cool ones. So highly recommend taking a look at this. Also, another useful website for someone on the startup side of things, or been considering building out their idea, is check out dealroom.co. That is a super helpful website to see where the investments sit today for different startups. What are some really cool use cases these startups are working on? And again, even if you want to work for one of these cool startups, I think that this is a great website to check out what some of the cool generative AI startups are doing today. So remember, I mentioned early on that two key areas where we're seeing a lot of investments is in image synthesis and language modeling. And this is kind of how, if you see on the left, it's from one of our partners called Runway. You'll see that in image synthesis itself, the whole industry has evolved. So we've gone from processing images faster to improving the quality, to context, to resolution and detail, right? How many of you have used Runway or like Midjourney and so on? Anyone who's given it a try? Yes? Do you see rich contextual images where you can just say, add 100 fishes in a fishbowl and have a rainbow background and so on? Like, you could literally define anything in text format and generate high resolution, detail oriented image. So I'd assume the answer is a yes or no, maybe, but I would highly recommend the best and the fastest way to learn is go out there, look up some of these applications. Most of these folks have a free trial or it's completely free. You just have to register with an email. Check it out, like let your creativity play. And I would highly, highly recommend, just test out some of these applications yourself. I may not be doing the best job with talking about these really cool features with just a slide capture of it, but highly recommend go out to these applications or apps themselves and take a look at how you can input your prompt and see some feature rich images or text to audio or audio to text and so on. Again, like I said, the whole idea is to get you curious enough for you to learn more. But that said, my presentation doesn't cover everything that has to do under the sun related to generative AI. So pay careful attention to image synthesis and what's happening and how the models are evolving in this space. One of the cool platforms that you may want to check out is Runway. Like play around with your prompts and see what you learn. I would love to hear about it. When you try, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or elsewhere. I'll share my email address as well. I also mentioned there's a lot of investment going on the language modeling side of things. And I also hear that one of you is building an Arabic LLM, if I got that right from earlier in my presentation. So if you haven't heard, our compute, NVIDIA's GPUs, are leveraged by Noor, which is one of the largest Arabic NLP model. We've gone on to support some other initiatives as well that are related to Arabic language. You might have heard of Falcon LLM and so on. We work with a lot of universities and enterprises in general, and we support their LLM initiatives or generative AI adoption, whether it's building out a voice assistant, it might be, like just building out a digital avatar. There's so much of ground up work that's needed that generative AI really helps or augments an individual or a company to get to their end goal, which is building, let's say, a virtual assistant or a digital avatar and so on, but still, like helping you speed up what you're doing really well than replacing what you're doing altogether, if that makes sense. This is just an example of how language modeling is being utilized by TII. There are a plethora of examples. I highly recommend that you take a look at NVIDIA's developer blogs. We talk a lot about how different universities and developers in general are leveraging open source and are even also building closed source models in general. So far we spoke about generative AI applications. We quickly touched upon foundation models and then investments that are happening in generative AI and so on. So again, my main point here is that NVIDIA is one of the key players. And if you're ever curious about generative AI, I would highly recommend taking a look at how NVIDIA's GPUs powered ChatGPT. So essentially, ChatGPT was trained on 10K plus NVIDIA's GPUs for weeks to get to building the interface and inputting or outputting what you see today. So highly recommend if you haven't already checked out ChatGPT. Check it out, or even if you have Google, you might want to just give it a try. Compare how ChatGPT does versus Bard. Like I said, the best learning happens when you start making some of these comparisons, going to the actual apps or interfaces, and writing prompts and learning how to be better at writing these prompts to get accurate answer, but also precise and concise output. So you might also be wondering, okay, how do companies productionize generative AI? Again, the whole goal here is not to focus on productionizing, but I just want to kind of quickly highlight how enterprises are using generative AI today. So there are different options in which customers or NVIDIA's customers can leverage LLMs. It could be, simple customizations to moderate customizations where you can fine-tune a pre-trained model, leverage the existing infrastructure and resources. This might mean, taking weeks to months, or you could, leverage multiple foundation models with extensive fine-tuning, which also means more dollar investment in general. So again, it's up to the customer how they want to leverage an existing large language model from a company like NVIDIA or from a startup that's building a service that's relevant to an end customer and so on. But think of it as like three important categories. From a customization standpoint. And there's more and more work being done to reduce the compute cost. One of the things that you might want to look up is Frugal GPT, FRUGAL, Frugal GPT from Stanford. Again, there's so much of work happening that I might not be capturing everything, but I would highly recommend that you take a look at Frugal GPT from Stanford as well. So, so far we discussed about LLMs, and now we're going to talk about customizing these LLMs. So for any customization to work in generative AI specifically requires three important things. Number one is accelerated computing, because you want whatever you're trying to achieve with, let's say, ChatGPT to be fast and accurate, right? That means you need something that's powerful, that is powering an application like ChatGPT in the backend. Number two is it's important to have a sustainable software stack and tools where you're able to curate data, train, fine-tune, test, and all of the steps that are involved in getting you the right output task, if you remember, right? And the third one is the AI expertise itself. Let's say tomorrow you're being hired by a local company and they say that, hey, XYZ, why don't you help us build an LLM for banking application? Expertise is going to be more and more important. And like I said, if there's anything that piqued your interest today, I would highly recommend go check it out, or even as simple as start with the Generative AI Demystified course that I mentioned earlier. It's super important to know where the industry is headed. I would highly recommend you pay careful attention to LLMs, how to customize LLMs, key applications, open source LLMs in general, and where the industry is headed. Okay, now to the cool part. I know that was a lot of theoretical stuff, but let's move on to the demos. For the next set of slides, I'm going to be featuring some of the demos that our teams have built. Again, it's a combination of language and image synthesis related demos. So the first one is around context and understanding. You probably all know about this. So when you input something, let's say, for example, you want to bake something, and then you have a specific ingredient that might have two different contexts in general. For example, these models need to be smart enough to cater to your specific requirement. So again, making it more contextual and making it understand what you're trying to solve. Are you trying to solve a statistical problem, or are you trying to solve an electronics related problem where you're using logic design, right? Where one or one, that's 1 + 1 is equal to 1, right? On logic design, if some of you are from the electronics engineering world, versus 1 + 1 in simple math is 2, right? So it's so important to place that context, and a lot of these models are getting smarter and smarter by the day as we speak, to be more contextual, relatable, and of course not hallucinate in general. This is just another example where I went into GPT-4, and here are some like prompts that I had, like give me some ideas to generate cool images in DALL-E. So DALL-E is another image output interface where you could maybe, like, let's say, mix images, or say build a palace with tigers standing near the stairs, for example. I'm making up these examples, right? But again, it's up to your creativity. But also, in order for you to even enter prompts in DALL-E, you could leverage ChatGPT, for example. So it's all about augmenting productivity at the end of the day. These are just some ideas for you to play around with, but I'm very confident you all can do a much, much better job than what I've done here in terms of the prompts and demos. So highly recommend go into ChatGPT, Runway, or DALL-E, start playing with it, and you'll get a hang of it, and you'll get really better at crafting your prompts in general. This is one such example where AI, generative AI, is being used in media production for any folks who are interested in learning how generative AI, how generative AI can be applicable to media production. Let me quickly play this demo. Are you all able to hear the audio? Magid, could you please confirm? Yeah, I'd assume it's a yes or no. But essentially, in media production, there are a lot of redundant tasks and repeatable tasks that might take a lot of time from the designers in general, right? So one of the ways you could actually save more time and have a pretty good outcome is by leveraging generative AI. Again, lots of tools are out there. This is just one such example from Runway. My goal is to give you some ideas, but it's up to you how you want to play around with these ideas and tools, and tell me how it goes, right? Reach out to me on LinkedIn. So another one, I know we briefly touched upon DALL-E. It's so important to focus on giving the right prompts, right? So when you message someone, you're asking for something, or you're conveying a specific message, right? For example, when you text message your friend, "Hi, I'm going to be at the university by 5 p.m., you are trying to convey something that is around, like you're going to be at a specific place at a specific time by specific time, and so on, right? So similarly, if you want a model to give you a specific output or act in a certain way, you want to master in with prompt engineering. So think of it as like your text messaging, your model, right? And you want to get better at it. You want to be as precise as possible, so that your model understands, like what you're trying to achieve. Are you trying to ask a Q&A type of a question, or are you asking for them, for the model to summarize, let's say, sentiments about a specific product that you like or you don't like, and so on, right? So pay attention to how you design these prompts, and it's going to be really important to keep them precise, and that way you an output that ideally doesn't have to be tweaked further, and you could leverage that as is, right? It could be generate an image of like a dog wearing a hat with the background of a full moon or whatever that is, right? But there are lots and lots of jobs that companies are creating today that's around prompt engineering. So if you ever want to build out a career around prompt engineering, I'd highly recommend go on LinkedIn, look up prompt engineering, and you'll see some really cool companies hiring for prompt engineers. But also there's a lot of literature online in terms of how to get better at writing prompts and getting the best out of models in general, foundation models in general. This is another example of how artists are using generative AI. You could switch backgrounds, you could do in painting, out painting, you could add different props and so on. There are many content creators who are leveraging AI to kind of customize it to their persona and so on. Again, these are just ideas. You could either be the content creator who wants to use this, or you could be supporting a content creator or creating a business around content creation. So highly recommend paying attention to generative AI in general. So now to mixing content. Remember, I kept talking about image synthesis, and one of the applications could be you could take two images and blend them and create something really cool, like a third image. This is one cool demo from Rosebud AI. There's the first image and the second image, and you remix them, and you can continue to remix them and generate some really cool images. Again, some fun ideas for you to try out. Get familiar with these UIs, get familiar with these apps, Rosebud AI, Runway, or Midjourney. Even check out NVIDIA's AI Playground. There's just give it a try, and you'll get a hang of, okay, like there are some really cool applications, and then there's lots of research being done. I'll share some important links in terms of where to go and how to get started. This is from Stable Diffusion. Again, you can go from taking a concept, even from words to image, to exploring different ideas or different scenes for that specific concept. You could do in painting, out painting, compress the image, fine tune it to a specific color, shade, background, make it more contextual for your specific use case. Again, Stable Diffusion is another avenue you might want to go check out. Runway, as I mentioned, Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, Rosebud AI, and so on. Again, just a few more ideas. Anyone on the content creation side of things, some really cool ways to leverage generative AI. Again, think of it as more so like helping you do something faster than relying 100% on, let's say, the model itself, right? Again, these models are becoming intelligent, and they only become intelligent based on how you can what you feed them, essentially, right? I'm sure a lot of you have heard of garbage in, garbage out. So we want to make sure that the data that these language models, or just an example, right? Language models have access to, or image models have access to, is usable, reusable, and relatable to your specific needs, and it's really augmenting what you're trying to implement. This is another demo of in terms of how to reuse content for different, advertisements, for example. It might have its own audio, but let me just play it really quickly. So essentially what you saw here is that you could change different materials or even background in one of the previous applications, right? I mean, sorry, demos. You could change the prop from, let's say, a basketball to a marble that you see here, or you could add new accessories to, like a subject of interest in your scene. Again, just a few ideas for you to try out. This is another application. Let me show this quickly. Okay, so this, as you noticed, there were some artifacts that you could, like get rid of, or maybe repaint the image, like change the scene setting in general. Again, the previous demo showed how you can add accessories, or like change the subject orientation and so on. Again, some ideas, up to your imagination, how you want to leverage generative AI. Okay, another cool application, you could remove specific objects from an image or a video, and make it look seamless. So a lot of designers today or content creators take more time to get this done, and you're spending more and more dollars to do it, versus leveraging generative AI. Like let's say Runway or another alternative. I'm sure there are like 10 other alternatives at this point. That helps you speed up what you're doing, and still do a fantastic job of whatever you're doing with content creation. Again, just a few ideas for you to experiment. On the left side, you see avatars being created leveraging generative AI vendors. Again, this is something that was done by DID. On the right side, you see another partner of ours in 3D.io. And on the right side is actually a demo of a digital avatar of one of my colleagues. So let me quickly play the 3D avatar on the left side that also has its own voice generated. Again, this is not a real person on the left side. What you see is not a real person. It's a completely digital avatar with its own voice that you create through DID. So you could also cater it to a specific language. You could turn it into an Arabic speaking digital avatar, or a human-like looking avatar, and so on. On the right, as I said, is one of my colleagues who created his own avatar. There you go. So highly recommend for you to check out these tools yourself, and you'll get a hang of it. You'll get better at crafting prompts and so on. We have lots of use cases that we have highlighted on our NVIDIA developer and NVIDIA.com pages. I'll be sure to share some of the most important links with Dr. Magid, so you can take a look at them. These are some, like recent partner use cases where they've leveraged audio to face generation, audio to gesture generation, where everything is a digital generative AI applicable, like use case. And Elara Systems is using generative AI and Omniverse. Forget about all these keywords, right? Omniverse is something related to NVIDIA, but what I want you to focus on is building this whole scene and explaining, or like focusing on the storytelling, the actual part that Elara Systems wanted to focus on, and creating awareness about sickle cell disease, for example, right? So all of this was put together by NVIDIA's Omniverse, all of the generative AI tools that we have, and some of our amazing partners, including, leveraging content creation tools like Blender, Epic Games, Unreal Engine, and so on. Again, just a few ideas for you to check out. So,
yeah,
quick
Amelia, they were
summary.
asking if
Yes.
all of these
Yes.
tools are free or not. I'll leave you to answer which are which.
So some of the elements are open source for developers. Most of them have a free trial, or again, if you're an enterprise developer, it's likely that your company will get access to these licenses. If you're a university student, most of these tools should have free access. That's kind of how most companies are set up. I'll share more links towards the end in terms of what you can access and so on. But that's a great question. Thank you for asking. So quick glimpse. Thank you. Quick glimpse, right? So if you're wondering, okay, like the focus of this presentation is not about, okay, what NVIDIA is doing, but it's more so, hey, like generative AI is important for everybody to know about it, but also experience it, experiment with it, and maybe come up with a cool idea that you might want to, build a business on top of it, or you might want to work for one of the cool companies where you yourself are implementing generative AI for an amazing product, right? So if you're wondering how NVIDIA comes into play, so NVIDIA powers ChatGPT for OpenAI's many of the research efforts, and one of which is ChatGPT. But again, we have many more partners that we work with. We work with companies like Accenture. We work with unique startups like Cohere. We work with Hugging Face on the open source side of things. We work with open frameworks, AI frameworks like PyTorch team, Runway. You saw some really cool demos early on. Wombo AI, whether you want to build some digital avatars and so on. There are many more partners that we're working with. So if you're ever curious about what the different use cases are, remember I showed an investment slide with different startups and different use cases. Start from there. That's an easy on-ramp to understand relatable generative AI being applied for some really cool use cases, especially something that resonates with university students. Now, NVIDIA has something called as NeMo, Picasso, and BioNeMo that runs on DGX Cloud, but we also work with partners like Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, Oracle, and many other partners that are in our ecosystem. But again, if you want to learn more about it, I would highly encourage you to join us at our developer conference next year. It's happening in March 2024 around third week of March. It's going to be both virtual and on-site here in California. But that said, there's a lot happening in generative AI. So pay close attention if you want to learn more. If you are curious about where research in generative AI is headed, specifically if you want to learn more about what NVIDIA's researchers are up to in the generative AI space, highly recommend that you take a look at our NVIDIA research page. You could simply just look up NVIDIA Research Generative AI. You'll get to our NVIDIA research webpage under the drop-down list, right? Under research areas, look up generative AI, and I think we have over 48 publications in the last 10 months or so. So take a look at that if you're curious on the research side of things. These are some amazing publications that you would want to look at. Now, I spoke about image generation and briefly language modeling, but again, these are just some areas that's seeing a lot of traction, but there's so much more happening. You're seeing like remixed music generation, for example, text to video generation, video to mixed reality, for example, and so on. Again, so many companies are working in so many different areas. So go ahead, check out some of these apps that I mentioned, but also if I were you and if I'm getting started with generative AI, I would sign up to all of these really cool applications that you like, sign up to their newsletters so you stay on top of the new features that get added from these companies like Runway or NVIDIA or Google and so on. Most of my learning happens through these email newsletters, so I highly recommend paying close attention to that, especially since students are so busy and you have so much to learn and study, right? So the easiest way that you can get started, go and check out these apps. Most of the student access portals are pretty much free. Sign up to the newsletters. That's a great way to stay on top of things that are happening. So I know we briefly talked about risks in generative AI. I mentioned about hallucination, but what is really important is that like pay close attention to what's happening on how LLMs are being built. What are some the key IP related, copyright related issues, or like improvements that are being made by the industry in general. I'm sure you might have already heard about certain biases, errors, and language models, having their own limitations, for example. Again, I don't think any of these language models, for example, are being advertised for complete perfection. What we want to pay close attention to is, like how is data being handled? Like how are the IP rights being orchestrated? Are there certain biases? And as you, especially as a student, make these discoveries, contributing to, let's say, open source projects and so on, make a difference. Like email the lead engineer from the GitHub repo and let them know about it. And when you do your Git commit, reach out to those engineers who are contributing to, let's say, I'm just going to make an example, like NVIDIA Nemo, for example, which is open source. Reach out to them, give the specific feedback. That will be super helpful, right? So pay close attention. Don't go fully yet by like, what the model output, right? You want to do your due diligence. So one of the things NVIDIA has been focused on, especially since these language models can be wide, right? If you don't give them the right data and so on, you kind of get off track. So one of the things that NVIDIA is looking at is building Nemo guardrails, which is open source by NVIDIA already. So you essentially create certain rules. You don't need to be an expert to create these rules. Pretty straightforward, where you kind of bound the language model. Think of it like, like physically, if you were to think about it as like you're fencing it. So, it doesn't cross its like behavior in terms of speaking something out of domain, irrelevant, speaking or outputting something that is biased, or speaking or showing something that is toxic and unexpected, and so on. And also how the interaction happens between your own application, let's say Runway as an example, and you generate a specific model versus how you integrate with third-party applications. Some of the times what has happened is that if proper guardrails are not built, what happens is that you might take someone's, let's say, work on google.com. I'm just making this up as an example, right? And without any reference or like quoting off that specific individual, this might end up sitting in your blog that ChatGPT generated, for example. So it's so important to bound your model and make sure that the credits are given correctly, and it's not biased in any way, it's not out of domain, and so on. So again, pay attention to how these guardrails are being built. The open source, one of the options, as I mentioned, is Nemo guardrails from NVIDIA, but there are so many more open source applications out there. One of the ways, if you want to build or productionize LLMs, is by leveraging LLM tools such as LangChain, where you can, leverage something open source such as a LangChain toolkit and rapidly plug into third-party applications. Again, these are just some ideas. There's Llama, Index, and so on. But again, up to you how you want to learn and build out. There are so many different ways depending on which company you talk to. But the absolute fundamentals that you need to know is what is generative AI? How do foundation models have a play? What are transformers? What are large language models? How do you build or customize large language models? How do you make sure that the large language models are models in general, like whether you're like working on a model related to image synthesis and so on, performs and outputs something that is relatable, safe, and secure, and is precise and specific to your application. So these are some examples. If you want to explore more on image generation, there are many no-code interfaces or tools. You could also check out some low-code pipelines through Hugging Face. If you want to get into the hands-on, how do I deploy generative AI? How do I use specific NVIDIA tools? I have a list of tools mentioned in here, which includes NVIDIA TensorRT and so on. That said, the scope of this webinar was not necessarily around NVIDIA's tools, but more so for you to get curious and get started with generative AI. One of the things, if you remember, we spoke briefly about prompt engineering. So get really good at building prompts. I'll share a link about how to build effective prompts that gives you the desired output and like not close to accurate output that one desires, right? It's all about getting it right with the prompt. So again, these are some examples for image generation. These are some examples for text generation. If you want to play around with text generation, highly recommend taking a look at some of these models and tutorials in general. I'll share all of these things after our call with Dr. Magid. So in summary, I know we're probably getting close to wrapping it up. In summary, here's what I need you to know. There are many players in generative AI. It's not just a hype. There are already applications that are leveraging generative AI, and the possibilities of Gen AI is it's just getting started. It's proliferating into animation, 3D scene generation, image synthesis, as I mentioned. It could be as simple as through Q&A, question and answering, through ChatGPT type of an interface, and so on. There are many key players. If you want to learn more, I'd highly recommend taking a look at what NVIDIA is doing, OpenAI is doing with ChatGPT. OpenAI had its own developer day in November. Again, if you're curious, dive into the developer blogs, learn about what Google is doing with generative AI, what NVIDIA is doing. A lot of us collaborate and build models together. It's not one specific company building everything by themselves. There's a lot of industry level collaboration that's happening. Take a look at what Microsoft is doing. If you're curious about the startup scene, I mentioned two important resources. One is Based and the other one is Deal Room Co. Take a look at companies that are listed there, the use cases that they're building on. Again, that's a great avenue for you to get lost in the generative AI world and build on top of your idea. Again, these are some high level. We covered generative AI, They briefly explain what it is. We spoke about foundational models, large language models, customizing large language models. We're seeing more and more traction, especially with image synthesis and language modeling. We also briefly covered about guardrails and why it's important to build safe and secure LLMs. And then I'll share more resources on how to get started, some of which I already shared, which is around image generation. There are a plethora of tools that you can play around with, which is more consumer or end user focused. Again, start with playing with one of these tools, try to understand how those operate and how you can design a prompt and so on, and then work backwards. Understand, okay, how do I get better at designing a prompt? What is happening inside of ChatGPT? How does it work when I ask a question about, like, are apples healthier than oranges for my diet, or whatever question is, right, for you? So work backwards, play with the application or the app, download the app, or get a free trial or get free access to it if you're a student. Most of these tools are pretty much free, and then work backwards, try to understand each layer from there on. Okay, so in conclusion, you've already heard a lot about viral models like ChatGPT or DALI, for example. So pay close attention. This is going to become more and more important within many industries, many products that you interact with. Generative AI is already here. I'd highly recommend that put your multidisciplinary skills into play. Even if you're wondering, hey, I am, let's say, an art student, or I'm a biology student, I don't know how generative AI plugs into my world. I'm pretty sure you'll at least find 5 different ideas if you were to Google how does generative AI apply to biology, for example, or how does generative AI apply to, let's say, financial industry and so on. Again, start with those small curious questions and work backwards. Play with these UIs, play with these models. And for those who are more nerdy, I would highly recommend going to NVIDIA's research pages, Microsoft, or Meta and Google. Read their research blogs. They talk a lot about where the industry is headed, how generative AI is evolving by the day. I'm not kidding. There's something or the other that gets announced every single day. So for the curious minds, I would highly recommend staying on top of these research blogs from key industry players. Hugging Face is a great avenue to learn more about LLMs in general. AWS is awesome too. Microsoft, NVIDIA, OpenAI developer forums are amazing place to learn more about. Again, some ideas for you. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to me in 2 ways. One is LinkedIn. 2 is you can email me directly, amulyav@nvidia.com. With that, I want to conclude the presentation part of it. And here are all of the resources for students in general. So if you're a student network, if you want to start an NVIDIA AI club on campus, I would highly recommend check out NVIDIA Student Network. Reach out to Dr. Maged. He can share more information as well. So there's some eligibility here. I know some of you already mentioned you've implemented projects on Jetson. So if you don't have an NVIDIA Student Network on campus, I would highly recommend doing this, especially if you already have access to NVIDIA's resources. And if you're working on a Jetson project, we would love to have you join our NVIDIA Student Network. If you want some inspiration about what type of projects you could implement, check out NVIDIA's Jetson Projects of the Month webpage. There are lots of ideas from small scale projects to some really cool, wicked projects that our community has put together. Again, this is for you to get inspired and implement. A lot of these projects already share GitHub information and code level snippets as well. So again, if you want to get further than being curious and playing with these different applications, I would also highly recommend that you start implementing some of these projects or ideas in a small scale to begin with. All right. These were just some additional information for folks from universities. If you want to become a student ambassador and get certified in, let's say, deep learning or data science and so on, please reach out to me or Magid. I'm happy to share more information. It's open for any student who's currently a part of the university or even faculty members. So we have a faculty track for deep learning institute certification or a student track as well. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. This is just a snapshot of all the amazing developer activities that we've had in the Middle East and Northern Africa region. We were in Tunisia last year for a hackathon along with Indaba, and we run a lot of developer events. So if you want to stay tuned to our in-person and virtual developer events, I highly recommend that you join our developer program. Dr. Magid will share more information in the WhatsApp group right after our call. Again, we would love to have you join us at our key conference happening next year, March of next year. That's GTC. But I'll also share all of these links, I promise, with Dr. Magid, and you're also welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn or directly via email, amulyav@nvidia.com. So want to learn about NVIDIA careers, developer program, startup program, everything, would want you to check out these. I'll share these links with Dr. Magid and team. All right. So with that said, I want to wrap it all up by recommending that, hey, if you are even curious, like even 10% curious about generative AI, and you're wondering, okay, where do I get started? Get to the basics, right? Like I said, play with some of these tools, understand how it works, figure out what excites you, and if you want to get further ahead, highly recommend taking a look at our generative AI free course. It's about 2 hours. It's a self-paced course. You can take it at your own convenient time, and you can pause it, watch it, 5 hours later and so on. But it's just 2 hours and you learn a lot. And there are many courses out there. But again, start with playing with the tools themselves or apps, download them, and work backwards. Try to understand, okay, what is going on with that specific application? How does image synthesis happen? How does the foundational model work? Which foundational model is being used, and so on. With that, thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope you were able to take away with 1 or 2 things related to generative AI. We typically run developer webinars every single month around generative AI and many more things related to AI in general, gaming, graphics, data science, and so on. So if you want to stay tuned to in-person and virtual events and webinars, highly recommend you join NVIDIA's developer program. It's free. It's open for anybody to join. It probably just takes about under 2 minutes to sign up. And if you haven't already scanned the QR code for our free course, highly recommend you do that so you can feature that on your LinkedIn or other avenues. Okay, that's about it, Dr. Magid. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right, great. So first thing, I just wanted to thank you again for your time, sharing your experience with us, and sharing, of course, those great tools that NVIDIA is offering, in addition, of course, to many other market players on the ground. I just wanted to note that while you were presenting, there was a big rally on the chat. We have about 35 people that have already registered for the course. Hopefully more will follow. That's one update. There were 2 main questions, general questions, I would say, that were repeated multiple times. People were asking if I can share with them the PDF version of your slides. That was one question. And the other question was, I think it was a question by Selma, where 1 second. Oh yeah, she can't understand the difference between ChatGPT and Gemini. That was pushed out by Google recently, and why Gemini outperformed humans. I'll leave that to you to answer, of course.
Thank you. So first question around the PDF version. Yes, happy to share a PDF version of it. I think that makes sense because there are so many links and blog resources that I've put together. It would be good to share with the group here. And I think the second one, so I think what's important to know is that every company trying to, like one up, right, in the generative AI space is going to improvise their models, right? They're going to get better at it, right? It's as simple as let's say you have two stores near your house and someone is selling something for like cheaper but like better quality, and then the other one wants to undercut this competitor, right? So that's how that think of it as like, like logically, the models are only going to get better and better. So essentially, ChatGPT is kind of like a front end UI, but also at the back end of it, you get to, apply any specific questions. It could be like, hey, like, can you summarize this PDF? Or can you help me answer this question about, let's say, statistics and so on? Same thing with Bard. So within Bard, Google's Bard, it's a Gemini model. And pretty much think of Bard and ChatGPT as like two similar interfaces, but like different players who have put that together. And essentially, you have to see the same answer. But given the models and how they're built by two different teams, you might see a little bit of a difference in terms of the style and way the output is being shown to you. But that said, the factual and like the logic of the response should be the same. And that should be like, I mean, it shouldn't be wrong essentially. So no matter what you pick, which is ChatGPT or Bard, they're just alternatives for you to, like ask your question or summarize something for you or generate an essay for you and so on. But again, like it's like going to two different restaurants. You know that there's this favorite dish of yours, but there might be a slight tweak, not essentially, again, the answer should be correct. The dish should be what you intended to receive, but at the same time, they might add salt before they add turmeric or turmeric before salt and so on. But overall, it should be the same. So think of it as like alternatives for you to explore. Again, it's only going to get more and more crowded. There are going to be more players, and like they try to sway you from, let's say, for example, using, if you're a Google user, if you have a Gmail account. I personally use Bard. ChatGPT is good, but again, like I've been trying to test it out, but it's pretty much the same, I would say. But I expect it to get better and better, right? Right now it gets extremely wordy. But yeah, that would be my answer. Okay, so I see another question here. Yeah, well, I see some remarks here about, Google inflated Gemini abilities for marketing. I can't really comment for another company altogether, but that said, like I think our hope is to build safe and secure LLMs in general, no matter which company builds it, right, and continues to improve those models. But what's going to be important is that, are we building safe within those guardrails specific to an application that is intended for mass consumption in general? Yeah, marketing does marketing, but yeah, you're right. Sometimes, yeah, you don't want to inflate anything, but who am I to talk about it, right? All right, is there a certain roadmap a graduate can follow to get into a career in AI? I would say that depending on your branch of engineering or study in general, there are lots of opportunities. If I were you, I would actually go on LinkedIn, look up people in your domain or even in your university. I'm sure there's that level of intelligence right now within LinkedIn. where if you click on your university page, you can see what people from that specific university are doing in terms of their industry, type of roles, and so on. And I would reach out to like 5 to 6 of them and say, hey, like your role looks interesting. How do I get there, for example, right? Again, there's not a specific formula that I could say that, okay, ABC, like these are the three things. But number one, there are so many opportunities in this domain. Like, don't think of it as like, okay, I have to be an ML engineer, I have to be a data scientist. There are so many functions and so many routes you can take to, like make a career in this field. So I would highly recommend go on LinkedIn, look up people who are like, posting some interesting things related to your field or related to something that you want to pivot to, right? That's number one. Number two is sign up to the email newsletters I was talking about, right? Pick your top 3 to 5 companies that's doing something unique in AI and stay on top of their announcements, right? Typically, they announce a lot of developer related stories or features. Pay attention to that, because a lot of the times, the more time you spend in terms of how these applications are coming together, what are some features that are released, you start thinking about, okay, how can I apply this to my idea? How can I apply this to what I'm learning at school? And so on. So number one, go on LinkedIn, look up your university, see like where folks are at, what has been their career journey. Number two is follow interesting people who post interesting things related to a field of interest or a field where you want to pivot into, right? Be more specific within AI, right? Third thing, even if you want to become, let's say, a partner manager at, let's say, a university, managing partnerships with, let's say, like companies, for example, and so on. It is so important to know about AI. So there's one very fundamental course that NVIDIA offers, which is also free. It's called Deep Learning Demystified. I would highly recommend that you check out that as well. Again, if you want to get more background in terms of, okay, what is this whole hype about generative AI? There's a free course that I mentioned about, but also if you're very new, brand new, building out your career, there are lots of courses, right? I'm just giving you an option that, you may want to consider the NVIDIA one. That was something that I used before I joined NVIDIA, before I interviewed at NVIDIA. Again, you want to learn from a company that has built infrastructure and tools to power artificial intelligence applications than someone who, like is probably like, think of it as like a second generation or third generation company. So go find those key players, like some of which I already mentioned in my site, and stay on top of their announcements related to developer products. And then three, pay attention to interesting news bites. Like you can go to avenues like Based10, TechCrunch, VentureBeat. There are lots of news avenues in general. Again, the industry in general is evolving at such a rapid phase that I myself find it a bit tricky sometimes to keep up on top of all of the news. But again, shortlist the key folks, talk to your professor or professors, talk to your peers, create a club on campus, share learnings amongst each other. Like pay attention to the local startups in your ecosystem. What are they doing? Can you do an internship and so on? There are so many ideas. Happy to brainstorm with individuals. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or email. Let's
Sure,
see.
and if you would allow me also,
Mhm,
Mulia,
mhm.
while you were speaking, I posted the link to the course that you mentioned, the Deep Learning Demystified, so people can check the link and they can check it out. And I
Perfect.
also wanted to add on the question that said, how can someone who's a graduate or even who is a senior undergrad or an undergrad can build his track record in AI? During the past 5 days, we have created 18 different work groups and 18 different data science clubs across 18 different universities in different locations across Egypt. And we have associated with each of these groups two main people. One of them is a university professor that would enable us to get some of the resources within the university so that you guys can even meet up personally and physically in a one-to-one manner. The other thing, of course, is that we had a very generous set of volunteers that have offered to mentor those who will be belonging to these data science clubs. So we have people, I would say most of them are outside of Egypt. They are working in different companies. We have Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, Netflix, NVIDIA, actually a large number of people from NVIDIA. I mean, we have a big bunch of people coming in willing to go and mentor you guys as you get started, or even if you have already started and have specific questions on a project, they will be working with you within these different groups. So we'll be assigning them to the different data science clubs. So hopefully you guys will be able to take these different courses that Moya mentioned today, at least as the starters. And then more courses will be shown to you, whether they're on the DLI, on the Deep Learning Institute, or even through other resources online, through Coursera, Udacity, Udemy, and so on. Back to you, Amelia.
Thank you. A question on someone wants to join the clubs, how to do so. Magid, do you want to take this question, please?
Yeah, so basically on the WhatsApp group, we will be sharing the way for you to go ahead and sign up in each of the groups. And again, we would be asking each of you to be joining the one which is in closest proximity to them. So the one which is going to be in your own governorate, so that you can be able to meet people around you, create this community, benefit from the different activities that will be happening on campus, in addition, of course, to the many things that will be happening online, whether they are mentoring sessions or they are central great meetups like the one that Amelia has availed to us today.
I see someone who's posted here about someone who started their journey 2 months ago. Do they need prior knowledge in ML and DL? If you recollect, we shared a deep learning demystified course. Again, it's always good to have more context, right? But you have to start somewhere. So, like I said, start with looking at one of these applications, right? Take as simple as like ChatGPT or Runway, right? Try to understand how can you write a simple prompt and then start on the side by side looking up. Again, this is like real time learning, right? How does the prompt go and ping, let's say, the image model, for example? How does the prompt gets consumed in the back end and give you this like third image, right? Remixed image that I shared, for example, right? So start with an application that you think is cool, and then like write down how does that work. Again, don't go by like textbook definitions in general. It gets bland and boring very quickly. So I'd highly recommend pick an application that you really like, and then like maybe like build a Word document. Start with like, okay, I really like ChatGPT, right? I want to maybe like work on a Q&A, question and answer approach. Start with that, right? And then write a question. So you write a question. How do I learn about ML? That's your question prompt, right? For ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT gives you an answer. Now, the next thing for you to Google or Bing or look it up on Mozilla is, how did ChatGPT do what it just did, right? Which is ChatGPT came out of nowhere and gave you do this, this, and this to learn about machine learning, for example, right? So make that as an active learning process. At least it has helped me, like like learn in an active environment than like trying to read up textbook definitions and so on. Again, there are lots of courses on Coursera. If you want to learn in a more simplified manner, NVIDIA has Deep Learning Institute, which is also our learning platform where you can go and take these free courses. The two that I mentioned, one is Deep Learning Demystified, and the other one is Generative AI Explained. So again, lots of ways to learn. But if I were you and if I were to get started, I wouldn't take the theoretical route. I would actually take a project or an application, try to understand how it work backwards, try to implement that even at a small scale, start using GitHub in general. And hey, the best thing is that there's GitHub Copilot, so you don't even have to write like code from scratch. There's a Copilot there to assist you. So again, take the risk, um, play with one of the applications, take some of these courses that are going to be concise. Again, you don't want to start with a 9-hour course. That would be pretty intense. Start with something that's small, where you can learn enough concepts and apply it to your favorite application and understand how it really works. I hope that helps.
There is also another question, but what about hardware accelerated AI and AI chips? How do we dive in this field? And are there any plans for that field in Egypt?
So I could talk about maybe NVIDIA here, right? So we have hardware, we have software that serves the specific need around artificial intelligence, and we have lots of libraries and APIs and so on that are built as well for our developers. So again, you could maybe even go the CPU route, but also GPU route. But if you look at, or if you're following the news, clearly, like NVIDIA has been a winner, especially at the hardware or AI chip level of adoption. We've seen an incredible adoption from developers to lots of enterprise customers. But that said, like pay attention to the very simplistic things, right? Which is take the deep learning demystified course that covers a good mix of hardware and software. And again, there are additional specific certifications that NVIDIA offers if you want to get to CUDA level and also understand how parallel computing works and so on. There are lots of online resources. If I were you, I would even go to ChatGPT and say, hey, like, can you summarize, like the AI chip landscape, for example, right? So lots of ways to learn about it. Question about any plans for that field in Egypt. Well, maybe Magad, is that a question for you? Maybe. Any plans for the field in Egypt? Can't really comment on investments related to that
Okay,
field.
in regards to giving access to NVIDIA GPUs, yes, it's going to be done for specific projects that have already applied with us at the ministry, and they will be given access to NVIDIA GPUs through AWS.
Thank you, Dr. Magid. Well, we do not have direct or like open access to all the universities in terms of hardware grant in general. But as Dr. Magid mentioned, like there are certain universities who already have compute, who have purchased compute. You should have access to Jetson's, NVIDIA Jetson platform, for example, to work on projects and such. But that said, like there are two ways to do this, right? One is to let Dr. Magid and team know that your university is working on some of these cool projects, and then like prioritizing compute access. That's one route, and then the second one would be just like stay tuned to NVIDIA's developer newsletters. So there are periods of time where we open up hardware grants for universities, and you can apply, but be specific about which project, and it has to be assisted by one of the faculty members, and that's when you likely going to get the grant accepted. But that said, I would highly recommend that you stay tuned to our newsletters, because when we have those hardware grant windows open up, that way you can work with your faculty and university and the higher education ministry to apply for compute access.
Excellent. I know we've gone overboard. The meeting was actually supposed to be ending at 7:30. and we've taken a lot of your time, Amelia. So thank you very much again for your time. I'm sure that you can see and witness right now how people are thirsty to learn. They really want to get into this. They can see the value and the impact that this is going to have on the market and industry. And hopefully they will be joining these working forces that will be creating different wonders as we go along. So hopefully with these different clubs being created across the different cities, we'll be able to work with students as they get prepped up. And also we will have a different group, which is more for more advanced working professionals and researchers and so on. We'll have a different group also for professors who want to learn more on how to introduce these different knowledge packages into their courses that they officially and curricularly teach at school. And one last group as well that will be targeted more towards startups as we get them into the NVIDIA Inception program. So there's going to be a lot that I'll be working with Amelia and Neda from NVIDIA so that we can avail as many resources as possible to all of you. And as Amelia said, that you have her email address. You also have mine. Feel free to ask any questions. And for those who asked about the WhatsApp group link again, I put it into the chat box for whoever wants to go ahead and join. And even though that there's only one main group right now is only announcements, in the next couple of weeks, we will be having these different groups, one for each of the different data science clubs. And also the other one that I told you about regarding more advanced group, a group for the more advanced people, as well as the one for the researchers and another one for the startups. I'm not quite sure if Amelia want to add anything. I'm sure that you're exhausted right now, but please, I'll leave it to you to put the final remarks and anything that you want to advise these wonderful people that have a lot of potential, and we look forward to supporting them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Magid. Again, there's some amazing disruption happening with generative AI, and like you all are working on some unique things. You're about to graduate, or you've just started school, you're working on a startup idea and so on. Pay attention to artificial intelligence. It's becoming more and more, like kind of like embedded to our daily lives, and especially generative AI and the productivity it's adding to different, industries and end user applications. So highly recommend that you at least know about it, even if you don't need to go into the depth of like understanding how like inputs get communicated into a model, and then how an output task gets executed and so on, which of course ideally you would want to learn. But start with picking one of the key apps that you really enjoy. Try to work backwards. Go on GitHub, look at all the cool projects that are being implemented on Hugging Face, for example, or even like universities and their research teams. Stay tuned for announcements that come on TechCrunch. Base 10, for example, is a great avenue to learn about investments in the area. Again, so many avenues. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to, like brainstorm with you in terms of how you can navigate through the AI, like world and different career options that you could explore. I myself was a signal processing engineer who pivoted from core engineering to, moving into product and marketing side of things and working with a lot of developers. So again, take out the mental block that you can't really get started. Even if it's 2 months ago that you started, that's amazing. So keep it going. I wish you all the best, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, muliav@nvidia.com, or on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I look forward to being there in Egypt again, hopefully sometime soon, and meeting you all in person. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Dr. Magid. I really appreciate it. It was so nice to interact.
It's a real pleasure. And again, as many of you asked, if this recording is going to be shared, it will be shared on the same page that you registered on, the NVIDIA page that we shared before. I sent you the link over here. Also, any type of resources that Amelia will share with me will also be added over there. In addition, of course, to a calendar for any upcoming events related to data science, AI, and deep learning. So thank you again, everybody. Thank you again, Amolia, and looking forward to more interventions that brings more and more impact to this growing community.
Thank you, and Happy New Year, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
See you.